And now another History Byte from VoicesOfOklahoma.com.
The Tulsa Race Riot of 1921 is considered to be the worst race riot in U.S. history. It all started in the late afternoon of May 30th, 1921. Now, within our growing library at VoicesOfOklahoma.com, we have several storytellers who have included the race riot in their oral history. For the next few minutes, you will hear them share their experiences and reflection. So we begin with Otis Clark, who was 19 when the race riot began, and whose full oral history interview on the race riot is heard here on VoicesOfOklahoma.com. But for now, Otis talks about the lead-up to the riot.
We were living good till the riot broke out. They tell me whites was jealous of what you might say, the colored people over on that side. Some of the main folk was working for some of the rich white folk that was down on the south side of the city. They was living good, and there was a jealousy, they tell me. They were living too good, and they want to run them out of town and take that part of town.
Otis Clark, who was 106 when he was interviewed, he died in 2012 when he was 109 years old. Marjorie Mayo Bird, whose name links her to the Mayo Hotel and more, has a memory of her father as the riot broke out. She was 5 years old at the time.
The race riot for me was that I remember that my father told Charlie, who happened to be the driver and the butler at that time, that he could not go home, that he was staying there at the house. He did not want him going home. And I do remember, for whatever reason, we went downtown and we were standing on the side of the street when the armored trucks, I guess you'd call them.
The tanks?
No, there weren't tanks. I guess it would be the National Guard. And they were standing up, driving down the street. There was seemingly no problem.
Marjorie Mayo Bird, whose father was John Mayo, who was his brother Cass, co-founded the Mayo Hotel. One of our centenarians, Wavell Ashbaugh, was 11 years old in 1921, and she remembers the trucks that were coming into Tulsa.
I remember trucks would come, and there's a lot of men standing up in them. But I do know that there was trouble, yes, because we had a black man and his wife that worked for us, and my mother took them over back roads and got them to safety. I don't know where she took them, but they said Mama's gone to take them to safety, and she took them away someplace to be safe.
Wavell Ashbaugh, and a remembrance as an 11-year-old. She was 105 when she recorded this interview and is now 107. Rex Calvert is a World War II veteran with a very impressive war record. He talks about his father, who was in the National Guard at the time of the riot.
He was here when they had the race riot. Being in the National Guard, they called in the National Guard to quiet things down. They didn't shoot a lot of people, and he was guarding the railroad tracks, so he and another man were stationed to keep that railroad track open.
World War II veteran Rex Calvert, who made 3 combat landings among many other military activities and earned a Purple Heart. Joe Moore of Moore's Funeral Home in Tulsa gave his oral history before his passing, and he said he would hear stories about the race riot from his father.
All I ever remember was the stories he told about going out, and they'd go out to start to pick up a black man and say, leave him alone, don't pick him up, and so forth, and look for the white people that were hurt and killed.
Would they even threaten him?
If he picked up the black person, they would threaten him, yeah.
Do you know what your father did? Did he pick up the black people anyway?
Not after they told him not to. I don't think he did. Right. He didn't have that much nerve, I don't think.
Joe Moore sharing a remembrance from his father about the race riot. Ada Lois Sipule Fisher was the first African-American law student at the University of Oklahoma, and her son Bruce remembers his mother talking about the race riot and that his grandfather was rounded up by the militia.
He was interned in one of the areas like all the other black people were, so he was treated no different.
He was actually brought to a holding pen in Tulsa's McNulty Park. They had a house also, didn't they? And what happened to it?
Well, it was burned out. The house was destroyed, the church was destroyed, all of it was destroyed. They moved from there to Chickasha.
Bruce Fisher, the son of Ada Lois Sipuel Fisher. Bruce also says beyond his family, he didn't hear anybody talking about the race riot. Reuben Gant played football for the Oklahoma State University Cowboys and played professional football for the Buffalo Bills. We asked him if the race riot hadn't taken place, what effect it would have on Tulsa today.
Think about all of the wealth that was in Tulsa, in Greenwood, of African Americans before the riot. Had not it been for the riot, that wealth would still be here. You had prominent families flee Tulsa because of the riot. They never returned.
Reuben Gant, for many years, was president of the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce. And you have just heard these Tulsa Race Riot remembrances as taken from individual oral history interviews on voicesofoklahoma.com.